All right, so we're diving into modern languages lecture interviews today.
Yeah.
Pretty cool blend of teaching and research and even some mentoring.
Yeah, definitely a really interesting field.
We've got the RoleCatcher Career Guide,
Yeah.
their interview guide, and even some notes about their AI.
Uh-huh.
So we'll unpack all of that for you today.
Sounds good.
Let's help you get ready to ace those interview questions.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really exciting about this field is, there's a lot of growth projected.
Oh, yeah?
So there's potential to really move up, department chair or dean or even leading big research projects.
Oh.
But first, let's nail that interview.
Okay, so jumping right into some common questions.
Okay.
The first one we've got here from RoleCatcher's interview guide is, can you tell us about your experience teaching modern languages?
Right.
This seems like pretty classic right out of the gate.
Yeah, definitely a classic opener. I think it's a chance to, just lay it all out there.
Yeah.
Show what you're passionate about, show what you're good at. Highlight the languages you've taught and the levels that you've taught and kind of what makes your teaching unique.
Yeah, like if you've taught Spanish 101, but then you've also taught advanced French literature courses.
Right, exactly.
That's a pretty big spread.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that they want to see.
Yeah.
That you're really versatile.
And what about those moments where you made a real difference?
Right.
Maybe you tried a new teaching method or you led a study abroad program or something.
Yeah, for sure. I think those examples, they really show that you're not just going through the motions.
Yeah.
That you're really thinking about your teaching and you're trying to, constantly improve and really make a difference.
Yeah. Those are definitely the star moments.
Yeah, and don't forget about technology. I think that's a big one these days. They want to see that you're comfortable with online platforms and, using language apps and all that kind of stuff.
And speaking of tech, this is where RoleCatcher's AI can actually come in handy.
Oh, yeah.
It can scan job descriptions and then recommend specific experiences to highlight in your answer.
That's really cool.
So that could be a really big time saver.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, next question.
Yeah.
How do you approach lesson planning for modern languages classes?
Right.
So this is kind of where you break it down.
Yeah. Yeah, I think here you want to really show your process, Yeah. How do you set your learning objectives? How do you choose materials? Do you adapt for different learning styles?
Yeah, like instead of just saying I use diverse activities,
Right.
be specific.
Yeah.
Like when I teach beginner German, I use interactive games like Stadt, Land, Fluss to build vocabulary.
Right, exactly.
That's memorable.
Yeah, it paints a picture.
Yeah.
And I think, don't be afraid to show how you weave in, cultural elements too.
Oh, right.
You can mention using films or bringing in guest speakers, to make it all that. Right.
Go alive.
Yeah, because it's more than just the language.
Yeah.
It's the whole culture.
Exactly.
That actually ties into our next question, which is all about creating that culturally inclusive classroom environment. What do you think is the key here?
I think it's about showing that you have, genuine respect for different cultures.
Yeah.
That it's not just about checking boxes.
Right.
But it's about, really fostering an environment of understanding and appreciation. And so, share how you've done that in your teaching, Yeah. Have you used role-playing to explore cultural norms?
Yeah.
Have you brought in guest speakers from different backgrounds, things like that?
Yeah, those are good ones.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to assessment.
Okay.
How do you assess student progress in modern languages classes?
Right.
This feels like it goes beyond just like tests and quizzes.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a chance to show that you really understand student learning.
Mention things like formative assessments.
Right.
Those check-ins along the way that help you adapt your teaching.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of a formative assessment?
Yeah, sure. Like, think about having students keep a language learning journal where they reflect on their progress and their challenges. And then you can use those journals to give them personalized feedback.
Right.
And really guide their learning.
Yeah, that shows you're invested.
Right.
Not just in their grades, but in their actual progress.
Exactly.
All right, question 4.
Okay.
How do you incorporate technology into your modern languages classes? We touched on this a little bit before.
Right.
But what else should people keep in mind here?
Yeah, I think, again, be specific,
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, I use Duolingo, talk about how you've used it. how you've used specific features of it to tailor practice to different learners.
Right.
Or, have you used virtual reality to create an immersive experience?
Right, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Again, RoleCatcher's AI can suggest relevant tech tools based on the job description.
That's handy.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, question 5. How do you stay current with developments in modern languages, teaching and learning?
Okay.
So this is all about, keeping up with the field.
Yeah, I think here you want to demonstrate, your commitment to being a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
So mention, conferences that you attend, journals you read, online communities where you connect with other educators.
Right. So you're not just keeping up. You're actively seeking out new ideas.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. This next one, I think, is a chance to really shine.
Okay.
Can you describe a successful project or initiative you led in modern languages teaching?
Right.
So this is, pick a good one.
Yeah. Choose a project that highlights your leadership and your impact.
Right.
Did you revamp a curriculum unit?
Yeah.
Did you spearhead a language exchange program? And make sure to, quantify your results.
Right.
Instead of just saying it was successful,
Yeah.
Mention how student engagement increased by a certain percentage or, how you expanded participation in the program.
Yeah. Those specifics really make it real.
Right.
Okay. Question 7.
Right.
This is about how do you motivate and engage students in modern languages classes?
Okay. So this is the fun one.
Yeah.
I think here, think games, debates, real world applications.
Yeah.
Anything that makes language learning fun and relevant.
Yeah, like having your students simulate ordering food at a restaurant in Spanish.
Exactly.
Or having them analyze a French film or something like that.
Right. You want to show that you can spark that passion for language and culture.
Way more exciting than just verb conjugations.
Definitely.
Okay, question 8. How do you incorporate intercultural competence into modern languages classes?
Right.
So this is about, understanding and navigating cultural differences. What are some examples that people can use for this?
Yeah, role-playing scenarios are great for this.
Okay.
Have students navigate a situation where, cultural misunderstandings could arise, like business negotiations or social gatherings.
Right.
You can also use case studies.
Okay.
From real-world situations and analyze, communication breakdowns and highlight successful strategies.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I bet you could also draw on your own experiences.
Right.
If you've traveled or lived abroad.
Absolutely. That's a great way to bring in a personal touch.
Right, and shows that you really get it.
Yeah.
Okay, on to question 9.
Right.
How do you collaborate with other language educators and stakeholders to improve modern languages education?
Okay, so teamwork.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here, highlight your collaborative spirit. Talk about, times you've worked on curriculum development or mentored new teachers or presented at professional development workshops.
What about being part of, professional organizations?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages or something like that.
Yeah, those are great. They really show your commitment.
Yeah, and I bet those are good for networking too.
Oh, yeah. Those conferences and meetings are gold mines for networking.
Right. Meet other people in the field.
Exactly.
All right. Before we move on to the career guide,
okay,
I just want to remind everyone about RoleCatcher's AI.
Yeah.
Remember, it can help you tailor your answers to each specific job. So you can practice your delivery, get feedback on your content, and even fine-tune your resume.
That's awesome.
It's like having a personal interview coach right in your pocket.
Right.
So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And dive into some of the career insights from the RoleCatcher Career Guide.
All right.
What are some of the things that really jumped out at you from this guide?
Well, one thing that really caught my eye was the emphasis on certifications. Did you know that having specific certifications like the DELE for Spanish or the DAF for German can really give your application a boost?
Really? I mean, I know they demonstrate language proficiency, but do they really make that much of a difference?
Oh, they absolutely can have it. Think about it from the hiring committee's perspective. They're looking for someone who not only speaks the language, but also has the skills to teach it effectively.
Okay.
So a certification like the DELE, for example, it doesn't just test your Spanish skills, it also assesses your understanding of teaching methodologies specifically for Spanish as a foreign language.
Oh, okay.
It really shows a dedication to the profession.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like it's a stamp of approval.
Exactly.
From a recognized authority.
Right.
And it's not just about getting the job either, right? These certifications can also help with career advancement.
Absolutely. They can It shows a commitment to professional development, which is something that universities really value. So it can definitely give you an edge when applying for promotions or even leadership positions down the line.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, those certifications are definitely worth looking into.
For sure.
What else did you find interesting in the guide?
Well, the guide also talks about the typical career progression for a modern languages lecturer.
Okay.
Starting out, you'd likely be an entry-level lecturer supporting senior faculty with things like course prep and grading.
Okay.
It's a great chance to learn the ropes, observe experienced educators, and really develop your own teaching style.
So it's like an apprenticeship almost.
Exactly. You're assisting with research leading review sessions, even getting involved in some research projects.
Oh, cool.
And as you gain experience and expertise, you move up the ranks to lecturer, senior lecturer, and eventually, maybe even a professorship.
Wow. So there's like a clear pathway.
Yeah, there's definitely room for growth.
It's not just about teaching either, right?
Yeah.
You're contributing to the field through research and scholarship.
Exactly. And the guide also mentions that, as you progress in your career, you might even consider taking on administrative roles.
Okay.
Like department chair or even dean.
So it's not just an academic path, it's a leadership path as well.
That's right. You can really shape the direction of language education within the university.
That's pretty cool.
And remember, RoleCatcher's Career Compass tool can actually help you map out these different career paths.
Oh, wow.
And identify the skills you need to develop at each stage.
That's also like a personalized roadmap.
Exactly.
All right, so we talked about career progression, we talked to certifications. What about just like the skills and knowledge you need to succeed as a modern languages lecturer?
Right.
What does the guide say about that?
Well, strong language proficiency is a given, of course.
Of course.
But it goes beyond just speaking fluently. You need a deep understanding of grammar, syntax, phonetics.
Okay.
And you need to be able to convey those concepts effectively to your students.
Right. So it's one thing to speak French.
Right.
It's another to explain, how French grammar works.
Exactly.
Someone who's never seen it before.
And the guide also emphasizes the importance of those soft skills we talked about earlier, like communication, collaboration, cultural sensitivity. Remember, you're not just teaching a language. You're creating a learning environment where students feel comfortable,
right,
exploring different cultures and perspectives.
And a big part of that is being able to assess their progress.
Right.
And provide them with constructive feedback.
Absolutely.
Not just through exams, but also through those formative assessments that we discussed earlier.
Exactly. And then there's the research aspect.
Oh, right.
You need to be able to formulate research questions, design studies, analyze data, and present your findings in a clear and compelling way.
And if you're mentoring research assistants,
right,
you need to be able to guide them through that process too.
Exactly.
So it sounds like being a modern languages lecturer requires a pretty diverse skill set.
It definitely does.
And speaking of diverse, the guide also mentions the importance of staying up to date with the latest research and developments in the field.
Yeah, language education is constantly evolving new technologies, new pedagogical approaches, new research findings emerging all the time.
Yeah.
You need to be a lifelong learner, actively seeking out new knowledge and incorporating it into your teaching.
Okay, so we've covered skills.
Yeah.
What about knowledge?
Okay.
What specific knowledge areas does the guide highlight?
Well, besides a deep understanding of the languages you teach, you need a solid grasp of different pedagogical approaches.
Okay.
Think about things like communicative language teaching, task-based learning, intercultural communicative competence. You need to know the theory behind these approaches and be able to apply them effectively in your classroom.
So it's not just about knowing the language, it's about knowing how to teach the language.
Exactly. And it's also important to have a broad understanding of the cultures and histories associated with the languages you teach.
Because you're not just teaching vocabulary lists.
Right.
You're teaching a whole world.
Exactly. You want to enrich your lessons, provide context, and create a more meaningful learning experience for your students.
Makes sense. Like the saying goes, language is the key to understanding a culture.
That's right.
Okay, so now what about work environment and industry trends?
Okay.
What insights does the guide offer on those?
Well, as you know, most modern languages lecturers work in universities and colleges.
Yeah.
But the guide points out that there are other options as well.
Oh.
Like research institutions or even government agencies.
So it's not just limited to academia.
Right. There are other possibilities out there.
Cool. What about industry trends? What's changing in the world of language education?
Well, the guide highlights the growing influence of technology, which we've talked about already.
Right.
Online learning platforms, language learning apps, virtual reality. It's all transforming the way languages are taught and learned. And as a lecturer, you need to be comfortable integrating these technologies into your teaching.
So it's not just about using the tech, it's about understanding how it can enhance the learning experience.
Absolutely. You need to be able to evaluate different tools, identify their strengths and limitations, and use them strategically to meet the needs of your students.
Okay, so technology is a big trend. What else is on the horizon for language education?
Well, the guide also mentions the increasing demand for intercultural competence.
Oh, okay.
With globalization and interconnectedness, it's more important than ever for students to be able to communicate effectively across cultures.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because language isn't just about words.
Right.
It's about understanding different perspectives and navigating those cultural differences.
Exactly.
So as a lecturer, you need to be able to help students develop those skills.
Precisely. You need to be able to incorporate intercultural communication into your curriculum, create opportunities for students to interact with people from different backgrounds, and help them develop the empathy and cultural sensitivity they need to thrive in a diverse world.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From specific interview questions to these broad industry trends.
It's amazing how much valuable information is packed into these RoleCatcher resources.
It really is. They've really thought of everything to help you prepare for this interview and for a successful career as a modern languages lecturer.
They really have.
Before we wrap up, I'm curious about one last thing.
Okay.
The guide mentions both pros and cons of being a modern languages lecturer.
Right.
What are some of the highlights on each side?
Well, on the plus side, the guide highlights the flexibility you have in teaching different languages. You might get to teach multiple languages at various levels, which keeps things interesting.
Yeah, bet.
Keeps you on your toes, constantly learning.
Right, and expanding your own horizons, too.
Exactly. And it also mentions the opportunity to work with a diverse student body. You'll be interacting with students from all walks of life.
That's got to be one of the most rewarding things about teaching.
Oh, for sure. That constant exchange of ideas and perspectives.
Yeah.
It's really enriching. And then, of course, there's just the deep satisfaction of inspiring and educating others.
Yeah.
Seeing your students develop their language skills and cultural understanding, it's incredibly fulfilling.
It's like opening up a whole new world for them.
It really is. And the guide even mentions the potential for international travel.
Oh, wow.
Some modern languages lecturer positions involve leading study abroad programs or even conducting research in other countries.
So you can combine your passion with adventure.
Exactly.
All right, so we talked about the upsides. What about the downsides? What are some of the challenges that the guide mentions?
Well, the guide does point out that job opportunities can be limited.
Okay.
Which, can make the job market pretty competitive.
So persistence is key.
Yeah, for sure. Networking is essential. And it also mentions that the income can be relatively low compared to other professions that require a similar level of education.
Right. So the passion for language and for teaching has to kind of outweigh those financial considerations.
Yeah, definitely. And the guide also highlights the high workload. And significant time commitment.
Yeah.
It's not a 9-to-5 job.
Right.
You'll be spending evenings and weekends grading papers, prepping for lectures, keeping up with your own professional development.
It's demanding, but the rewards can be huge.
Absolutely. And then finally, the guide mentions the potential for job insecurity.
Okay.
Particularly in academia, depending on the institution and the funding. Your position might not always be guaranteed.
That's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
But I think overall, even with those challenges, it's clear that being a modern languages lecturer can be a really rewarding career.
Oh, for sure.
Especially for those who have that deep passion for language and culture and education.
Absolutely. It's a career where you can make a real difference, in the lives of your students while continuously learning and growing yourself.
All right. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you want to leave our listener with today?
I'd say go into that interview prepared, confident, and passionate. Use these insights from RoleCatcher to really showcase your skills, highlight your experience, and let your enthusiasm for language education shine through.
And remember, those AI tools are there to support you.
Yes, they are.
Every step of the way.
Absolutely.
From tailoring your resume to practicing your interview responses, you've got the resources to make this a success.
You do.
Now, one last thought to ponder.
Okay.
As technology continues to shape the field of language education, What innovative teaching approaches would you be most excited to explore in your own classroom?